In this tutorial I'm going to go over just creating a basic animation in Photoshop. We're going to use the video timeline for this one. We're also going to do a later video which is going to use frame by frame. We're just going to explore the video timeline in Photoshop for this one. So if we go to Window and Workspace, and we just want to make sure we're in motion. So if you've got Essentials, which is normally what happens, you're usually in Essentials when you start, make sure you go over to Motion and you've got your Motion Workspace here, and this will just give you what will be the window that will contain the video timeline in there. We're going to create a new file, so we're going to go to File, New, and in this I think we'll just create, we'll just go to Film a Video, and I think we'll just do a standard HD TV 1080p image, and we just click Create. So make sure you're on the Film a Video tab and you've got HD TV selected, and then just click Create. One of the things that will appear in here is you'll get a white background, but you'll also get these blue lines that are sticking through the image, and these are the guides, and we want to turn those off because we don't really need these guides. We're not actually going to create something for TV, and these are essentially safe zones, or usually mark out the safe zones. If you're creating an animation, this may be zones where you don't want to put vital text or information just in case they get clipped off the screen or something along those lines. So we're just going to get rid of those. Just go to Window, and we're going to, View, go to, you can either clear guides or just go to Show, and then just turn off guides, and then those will disappear. So we get rid of those. The other thing that'll happen as well, later on we're going to use the Select tool probably. Now what I always do is make sure I've got Auto Select unticked, because Auto Select I find to be incredibly annoying. So make sure that's unticked. We don't want to accidentally select things as we're working. And that should help us out when we start moving things around. So we've got our window, and we've got a workspace, and we're in motion, and we're going to create a video timeline for this. That button down there appeared when we create a new file. You won't see it until you've got a new file created, or you're working in a file, and then it will appear. There we've got a couple of options. You might default. Sometimes it can default to create frame animation if maybe somebody saved those settings. But when you use it from scratch, you never used it before, it usually defaults to create video timeline, and that's what we're going to do. And that's a button, so we're just going to press that, and that's going to create our timeline. There's a few things that we can do here. We can zoom in and out on the timeline using this slider here. The time is shown in frames, so we're from 0 to 10, 20 and 30 frames, so we're probably on 30 frames per second on this. But we can check that later when we change some of the settings. So I can zoom in and out, and as you can see, the slider, as it does with all animation programs, will slide from left to right and left to right. So I'm going to just hit the play button. I'm just going to do that, and then it'll play there. So we've got our timeline there. So we want to make a few changes. The first thing we want to do is we want to change the length of this video. So we want to go in here, and we're going to set timeline frame rate. One of the things we'll do is just making sure that we're not in a really fast and detailed frame rate, and 29.97 seconds is going to be a lot of frames. We only want 12 frames per second. That's kind of usually this level for things like anime. It's not too taxing a frame rate. You're only going to have to do 12 pictures per second rather than 24, 25 or 30. So that's going to cut down on the amount of effort that you're going to have to put into this, or the amount of time it's going to take you to just get a completed animation. So I'm going to change that to OK. That was just going into there again. That was set timeline frame rate. So if I want to change the duration, how long this will run for, I can just click on the layer, and I'm just going to move this layer along. And so I've gone from let's have a look. I've gone from about 3 seconds up to 14 seconds here. It's a little bit confusing. Whoops, I've moved the whole thing. That can get really confusing. Let's just move that back there. So it can get a little bit confusing because when you look at the settings here, it says frames, but actually what it means is seconds. So we've got, as you can see, we're on 12 frames per second, so we go 2 frames, 4 frames, 6, 8, 10, and then that's 1 second. So it's a little bit confusing. It looks like it should say 1 second, but instead it says 1F. So if we press play on that, that'll just run for a second. Okay, so we've changed that so that it's, let's see how long that is. Zoomed in too far. Changed it to about 12 seconds there. I'll just change it down to there. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we want to create a animation layer. So this is our background layer. We can't actually add animation to this, so if we paint over the top of this, it's going to stay still. Nothing's going to happen. I'll show you how that works in just a second. So if we go to layer and we go to video layers, and what we want is new blank video layer. The first thing, often people pick new video layer from file, but that'll just start to open up a dialog box for you to load something in. It's new blank video layer that we want. So we just click on this one and it just creates a new video layer. Now we can tell that it's a video layer because when it appears in the layers over here, it's got a little film clip just next to it. So we know that this layer underneath here, so I've just moved this up here so you can just see it. Let's have a look. Okay. So this is our background layer here. This is just going to be still, and this one is going to be our video layer. This is the one that we're going to be animating with. So if I just move that around, you'll see that, okay, layer 0 is connected to this layer 0 here. Layer 1, our video layer, is going to be connected to layer 1 here. So if I change the name here and I call this animation layer, whoops, and change the name in the layer over here, it also changes over there. So we can see that these two things are connected here. So let's say I'm just going to do some really rough animation here. Let's have a look. I'm going to just paint a couple of things. Just going to go to my paintbrush here, and I'm going to do the standard kind of a rough bouncing ball. So I'm going to just, whoops, paint that on there. I've got the wrong color. So I'm just going to go to edit, and I'm going to do undo. Just going to change a couple of settings here. Just going to make this black, and also my opacity here was 28%. So I'm going to do just really rough bouncing ball here, and I'm going to start off. I'm on frame 1, so you can see down here on frame 1. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see the difference between the frames, and I'm just going to draw a really basic circle here. Now if I move to the next frame, you'll notice that it's completely disappeared. What I can do is I can see what I've painted here by looking at by undoing, or by just doing this little drop down here, and you can see a few different settings that we've got there, but you can see that this layer has been edited, had something added to it, because we've got a little block that's appeared here, a little keyframe. I want to be able to see my previous frames to make this easier, so I'm going to go back into this menu, and I'm going to enable onion skins, and when I do that I can see my previous frame here. I'll go back into that again, and I'm going to go to let's have a look, onion skin settings, and then in here I can see that we can see roughly, we can see sort of 50% opacity, the frame before the keyframe I'm working in and the frame after, and that's just going to make it a little bit easier to paint this ball animating, because I'll be able to see the previous frames through the paper, as it were. So I'm just going to OK on that. This is going to be pretty bad. I'm just going to really roughly draw this in, and I can see now if I get to the stage where I really want to know where this trajectory is going, I can only see the frame beforehand, and this is where the onion skin settings come in really handy. So I'm going to click on that again, and I'm going to say it's going to be 3 frames beforehand. So 3 frames before. I'm going to click OK, and that just means I can see the trajectory that it's taking there. And then I'll just be able to just do some more of this, spread it out a bit, make it stretch a bit, and then hit the ground. In fact, pretty much it's going to do this. This is probably not the way of doing it, but hey, I'm going to do this here. Okay, so I'm just going to do that much. For now, it's not the greatest animation in the world, but it's just for the purposes of this demonstration. I'm going to turn off onion skins. So I'm going to click on that, turning off onion skins. I'm going to press play, doink, and you'll be able to see that the ball bounces there. So just press play and you can see the bounce. Now a couple of other things I'm going to play around with is these keyframes, but not on this layer. I'm going to create a new layer again. So I'm going to play around with the position keys, but I'm just going to do it on a separate normal layer. So just a layer, new layer. Now this isn't an animation layer, it's just a standard layer that I'm putting in. I'm going to just change the duration of that. And I'm just going to create a little platform. So I'm going to use my rectangular select. I'm just going to create a little platform. Just clicking and dragging just to create this selected area. Go to edit and stroke, and I'm just going to just create a sort of platform here. So this all, it's going to be a platform, it's a rectangle. I'm going to can click anywhere on the screen to deselect, and then I'm going to open up these settings here, the position settings, and I'm going to click on the keyframe icon, and I'm going to move this using shift to make sure that it moves in a horizontal vertical direction. I'm going to move it to there just to keep it level, and then I'm going to just move it to move the time slider along, sorry, just about to there, and move this along to here. So that means it will move from left to right because I've got one keyframe where it's positioned there, and the next keyframe it's positioned here. The other thing is I can actually select this one, the animated layer underneath, the animation layer, where I've got the keyframe animation. I'm just going to move it so that the ball bounces actually on that surface. Now I don't have any keyframes on the position here. If I did, what it would do is the same as the platform, where it would interpolate the position between 2 points, but I've got no keyframes there, so that should stay exactly where it is. So when it comes down, it'll bounce off the platform there, and if I just press play again, it'll boink, it'll bounce off the platform. So there's 2 different ways of animating there. There's a few more, but it was the main ones that I wanted to cover. One is using an animation layer. Remember that the animation layer has the film clip in, and when we go to layer and video layers, new blank video layer, that's how we create the animation layer. If we want to just create a standard layer, doesn't have any animation, frame by frame animation on, but you can animate the position and the opacity and the style of it, and we just animated the position in this instance, then just a normal layer, new layer will work just fine for that. And you've just seen just a couple of different ways that you can do some animation with this, and that should just give you enough of an introduction to the video timeline animation in Photoshop.